Okay, well, we are about to have our second series on lessons from the 4 levels of healing. And so I am excited again that you all are here, because this has been, being able to be part of this conversation has been very healing for me personally. And so to know that all of you are here, and with the hope that, you know, we will talk about something that will help you through this lingering pandemic, is the reason that we pull this conversation together. And so I will be introducing our speaker in just a little bit. I wanted to start us off with a reading, something that I think is was very helpful to me to kind of help set the tone for what we're talking about. So I'm Reverend Denise Junius, the interim pastoral care coordinator at Resurrection MCC. I know most of you, and I want us to be reminded of our first week, which was talking about the spiritual level of healing, and we had a wonderful speaker who shared some great advice, and just even was what I appreciated was his transparency about how he is coping with this lingering pandemic. And I'm sure many of you may have appreciated that as well. And we do have the recording of that event for anybody who may have missed it. So tonight, though, we are talking about the mental aspect of life, and focusing on some of the ways in which we actually believe, and how that affects us, and how it affects how we interpret what's happening in our world and what's happening to us as individuals. And with this lingering pandemic and the changes in Delta cases, I think that, you know, we're all being challenged at a mental level. So hopefully tonight you can walk away with resources and information that's going to be helpful to you. And I encourage you to have your questions ready, have your comments ready, because our speaker is a wonderful person who's an expert in this area of psychiatry and mental health. So let's start this way by introducing the topic for tonight. This poem I saw on Facebook, a person by the name of John Rodell, and some of you may be familiar with him. I really wasn't familiar with him until a friend of mine shared this post. But listen to this. Listen to this. My brain and heart divorced a decade ago over who was to blame about how big of a mess I have become. Eventually, they couldn't be in the same room with each other. Now my head and heart share custody of me. I stay with my brain during the week, and my heart gets me on weekends. They never speak to one another. Instead, they give me the same note to pass each other every week. And their notes they send to one another always say the same thing. This is all your fault. On Sundays, my heart complains about how my head has let me down in the past. And on Wednesday, my head lists all of the times my heart has screwed things up for me in the future. They blame each other for the state of my life. There's been a lot of yelling and crying. So lately, I've been spending a lot of time with my gut, who serves as my unofficial therapist. Most nights I sneak out of the window in my rib cage and slide down my spine and collapse on my gut's plush leather chair that's always open for me. And I just sit until the sun comes up. Last evening, my gut asked me if I was having a hard time being caught between my heart and my head. I nodded. I said, I didn't know if I could live with either of them anymore. My heart is always sad about something that happened yesterday, while my head is always worried about something that may happen tomorrow, I lamented. My gut squeezed my hand. I just can't live with my mistakes of the past or my anxiety about the future, I sighed. My gut smiled and said, in that case, you should stay with your lungs for a while. I was confused. The look on my face gave it away. If you're exhausted about your heart's obsession with the fixed past and your mind's focus on the uncertain future, your lungs are the perfect place for you. There is no yesterday in your lungs. There is no tomorrow there either. There's only now. There's only inhale. There's only exhale. There's only this moment. There's only breath. And in that breath, you can rest while your heart and your head work out their relationship. This morning, while my brain was busy reading tea leaves and my heart was staring at old photographs, I packed a little bag and walked to the door of my lungs. Before I could even knock, she opened the door with a smile, and as a gust of air embraced me, she said, "What took you so long?"
Thank you. I like that.
Thank you. Tonight, we have Dr. Daryl Shorter, who is a psychiatrist and someone who spent 12 years working at the VA hospital as an addiction psychiatrist and also for primary care. Today, though, he works at the Miniger Clinic and Baylor College of Medicine. He's the medical director of addiction services. And he's also an associate professor at Baylor College of Medicine. I met him several years ago when he was being recognized for his work in the community and how much he has cared for the community at large and just given so much of himself. And I knew that one day we would be doing something together. And so I'm glad this day has finally come. And with that, I want to welcome Dr. Daryl Shorter.
Thank you, Reverend Denise. Can everyone hear me okay? Great, thank you. Thank you so much for asking me to come and speak and facilitate what I hope will be a really rich conversation and a time for reflection and maybe even a little bit of planning as we all wrestle with everything that's going on right now in the world. As Reverend Denise mentioned, I am a psychiatrist, and so I spend a lot of time talking about mental health and how to optimize that in the lives of individuals, but also expanding that to families, both the family that you might have been born into as well as chosen family, as well as the impact of mental health on communities at large. And to say that we have experienced challenges from a mental health standpoint over the last year and change is a gross understatement. And so part of what I think would be important for us to do tonight is to simply acknowledge how tough it's been and how tough it looks like it's going to be for a little while longer. I don't know if you've had this experience, but I think about how I might be having a meeting on Zoom for work and everyone's like business as usual. But then you read the numbers related to COVID, or you read about Afghanistan, you read about the hurricane in Haiti. I mean, you read about the new thing that has taken place, and everyone's supposed to just kind of roll past it and respond to emails in a timely fashion. I mean, it almost boggles the mind and doesn't make sense. And so I appreciate this space and this opportunity for us to be honest with how we've been feeling, but also because my part of the series is really talking about mental healing, I want to spend some time talking about our thinking in particular. And so I'd like to open by just reading a little bit of what Shakti Gawain talks about at the very beginning of this segment of the book on mental healing. And she begins, chapter 3, the mental level of life encompasses our intellect, ideas, beliefs, and basic life philosophy. In order to clear and heal the mental level, we need to become conscious of our thought patterns and underlying belief systems. We need to educate ourselves about other ideas and eventually enable ourselves to consciously choose the beliefs, values, and philosophies that make most sense to us and support our conscious evolution. Okay. I think when I hear that, the first thing I think about is how do we come to know what it is that we know? And this is a conversation. I mean, I have certainly have my ideas, but I really invite you all to participate in this conversation. I've been talking all day, so I'm almost a little tired of hearing myself talk. So I really want to hear from you. How do you think you came to know what it is you know? Please, George.
Yes, right now, I don't know what I know. You know, I forecast last year when we started this pandemic, I was hoping and praying by February we would have a vaccine and we would be on the healing side of it. And you know, that almost happened. And then I thought, oh my God, we're going to be going back to normal. And here it is, August, and we're worse off than before. And we're still in a pandemic. And other stuff is going on around us that usually goes on around us, but we're still stuck here. So I don't know what to think anymore. I don't know what I know.
Thank you for sharing. Can anybody relate to that? I can. Others?
I'm kind of a black and white person. And when you said, how do you know what you know? I was thinking, okay, so I know what I know from my parents, from life experiences, from peers, from questioning, from research, that kind of thing. So what I know may not always be right because I look at it through my lens, all of those things, and other people don't have the same lens as I do. So I think we all come from different perspectives.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Angel?
I know what I know by being receptive in 360 degrees of the input. I feel that the best decisions can be made for myself if I allow myself to take in the maximum amount of information and then using discernment through my own intelligence and discernment from God, get some grounding there. I learned to seek information and not just go by simply one course of what I've heard. And the difficult part for me is since joining this group, in fact, it's a year anniversary since I've been involved with NCC. Best thing that's ever happened to me. One of the things about being such a collector of perspectives of information is I'm not shocked where we are. And that's been something that I've shared with the people in the groups that I'm involved in. And it's not a pleasant picture what I see being painted, but it's not a hopeless one. And so, so to personally manage it myself, I've stopped focusing on what I can't do and thrown myself into what can be done in the space that I fill.
Thank you, Angel. And I appreciate your pivot from the thought or the cognition to the behavior or action. And we'll end up spending a little bit of time talking about how taking action can help us to make sense of, or at least mitigate some of the stress around the challenges with our thinking. But Ray brought up something that I want to make sure, and I believe it was Ray, talking about we come to know what we know based on what we're taught from a very, very young, very early age. And so you can cast your mind back to some of the messages that you received, some of the lessons that you learned when you were only knee-high. You might have learned things about yourself, what you were supposed to do, who you are supposed to be, how you're supposed to act. All of those things are transmitted to us from a very, very young age. You also can begin to develop a sense of safety in the world based on how you're cared for. Not everyone is fortunate enough to grow up in a home without various types of trauma that they might be exposed to. And so I think it's important to kind of consider and really cast our minds back to the earliest messages that we received, the earliest teaching that we received, and how those same core beliefs may be present for us now, today, and how they may impact the way that we see ourselves, the way that we see relationships with other people, and the way we see our relationship to the world and spirit. But it all began before we maybe even had language. There is something about crying as a baby and knowing that a parent or parental figure will pick you up and soothe you. And in the absence of getting that consistent sort of emotional message, one can develop a sense that the world is not safe. I will not be taken care of. And that those types of core beliefs can then transmit into the way that we interact with other people. I am not safe. Oh, maybe I can. Do I need to, let me change my view.
Oh, that's just to everybody, Daryl.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. So when we begin to dissect some of these beliefs that we have about the world and really about our own selves and our sense of self-worth, there's a history there. There's a context for those kinds of thoughts. And why that becomes important is because in my work, one of the things that I'm most often surprised by is how I might ask someone, how are you feeling today? And instead of responding with a feeling word or an emotion, they tell me either what they're doing or what they're thinking. Now, next week, you all will be speaking with one of my colleagues who's going to focus on the emotional aspect of that. So I'm going to leave some of that thunder for her to bring next week. But I want you all to sort of think back and sort of sit back and reflect on how many times you might have even been the person who says, hey, I'm fine. But underneath all that fine is a collection of thoughts and turmoil that is really driving a behavior like Angel sort of talked about. So when we dissect out what is it that we know and how did we come to know it, it really does require that we cast our thoughts back to what do we learn about what it means to be a man, a woman? What does it mean to be productive? What does it mean to be successful? And I can say those words to you and automatically you have certain things that come to mind, right? You're supposed to sit a certain way, you're supposed to wear certain clothes, you're supposed to eat certain things, you're supposed to be a certain size, you're supposed to have a certain kind of All of that stuff, all of those messages and ideas and beliefs are things that are really so ingrained in us because we were taught them from such a young age. So that then what happens in our adulthood is that most of the work is undoing a lot of these ideas that you inherited that you never even asked for, and really beginning to question whether or not you think that they're true to begin with for you and for the people that are around you and in your life. So began early, but I loved what was said about, I don't know what I know. I agree with you. I think right now, in 2021, it is harder to know what we know than ever. Because there has been a massive campaign of misinformation that we have been living in over the last several years that began with an election and probably even before that. So the idea of trusting news sources, people don't trust news sources. They don't trust research. They don't trust science. They don't trust that a vaccine can be helpful to them. There's a great deal of mistrust. And of course, that mistrust then translates into the way that people feel about themselves and the world and their actions and their behaviors in it. So if you were to ask me now, like, how do you know what is true? How do you know what's true? From social media? From Google? From a conversation with someone? How do you know? Okay, so sit with that. So now that we've talked, oh, please, Craig, go.
You're exactly right. The only thing that I know that's true is when I'm sitting at my desk and working and seeing the things that I see, can taste, touch, and feel. And beyond that, to me, everything is hearsay. I don't know whether I turn on NBC or Fox if I'm being told the truth. I have people who vehemently disagree with me in my own family and my opinions. And when I say something, they're like, well, where are your facts coming from? And I'm like, well, I just believe that the medical community is not out to get me. I think they took an oath that, they're actually trying to help people and, stuff like that. So yeah, the only thing I know for sure is what I can see, hear, taste, and touch with my own senses. And everything beyond that almost has to be called into question.
Thank you, Craig. I really appreciate your share. And can understand that this is like, your experience is not unique. I think we are all right now in a phase of history where our ability to trust what it is that we once knew, that it's true, we just aren't able to do that to the same extent. So given that, I think that what we have seen in response to this experience of not really being able to trust what it is that we know or think we know, that's where that anxiety, this pervasive sense of anxiety, the root of that for us as like collective humans is there. There's also a collective grief aspect to this as well, where we've lost so much of like our sense of self and our identity and our sense of safety in the world. Like that, of course, has been shaken to its core. But this idea that like, I don't know how to access information other than my five senses, that creates a great deal of uncertainty within us and within the world. Does that make sense, or am I just like coming out of left field on that? I mean, Reverend Denise's poem talked about how the head was mostly concerned about an uncertain future. And I think that under most circumstances, when our heads spin up and we get kind of wrapped up in our thinking, which is oftentimes the core of anxiety, anxious thoughts, that yes, it's about the future and it's about sort of where we're heading, where we're going, and we're not sure about that. But we've ratcheted up a level because of our inability to really trust our present. George, you wanted to say something? Yeah.
Yeah, we used to be able to go places. We used to be able to think of vacations in the future. We used to be able to plan on those things and actually be able to do them. And now in this uncertain world, we have a cruise coming up in November. We have no idea if we'll be able to go. We've already had to cancel it 3 times. But there has been one good thing about my mental capacity to feel decent is we do have a Zoom group that meets every day. And that has been a godsend, Dr. Shorter. It has been a very good godsend for me to know that there are people out there I see every day and I can trust every day. So out of this pandemic has evolved something else that I never thought would happen, but it's still mentally frustrating and discouraging to think we cannot really plan a future.
Yeah.
Like we used to.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. You know, it's been interesting to talk to folks about the blessings that have come out of this experience, the reconnection that people have been able to create within family, within friendship groups, within communities. There is, for some people, there are some silver linings, even though we are also still experiencing so much struggle. You know, this is not my ideal way of interacting with people, but I am grateful that we have it, because if this had happened 20 years ago, we would really, I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine if this had happened 20 years ago, pre-Zoom, pre-internet, how we would have been able to remain connected with each other? Forget about it. So as much stuff as I want to give Zoom and all of these other technological platforms, I am certainly appreciative and grateful for them because they do allow us to keep connected. So I think we'll pivot here, and if we're having a harder time sort of understanding and making sense of the world in terms of our own thinking about the world, I want to bring it to the micro level, to the level of the self, right? And how can I understand the truth in my own thinking about myself? When is my perception of myself accurate? So we've talked about how it's been challenging for us from a mental standpoint to make sense of the world because we're getting competing messages and misinformation, I think deliberately. And now we've also got to do that work on ourselves. Do you always have the most accurate impression of yourself? I'll wait.
Hi, this is Laura. I can answer that definitely no, I don't. At least that's what I'm told.
Yeah, others, or is Laura the only one? I got your note, Nelda, thank you.
Well, my wife and son who live with me tell me that what I think of myself is not who I am. But the pandemic has been rough, but then I was diagnosed with a lot of health condition and am now disabled. And I'm home all the time except to go to doctor. And so I have a very definite view of myself. And my family here goes, no, it's not real, but sometimes it's really hard not to see past the fact that something I could do even 5 years ago, there's no way on earth I can do it anymore. And that's where my perception of myself is as useless, because I can't get out and do what I used to do or contribute to the family or all the things I used to be able to do that I just cannot do anymore. And it makes me feel useless, and I don't know how else to explain it. So yeah, I have a very negative impression a lot about myself.
Thank you, Laura. And I feel your pain, and want to certainly validate how the messages that we receive in this society and in this culture and in our families is that our worth is tied up in what we do. It's how we produce. It's an activity. And it is so hard for us to accept that our worth is not tied up in really any of that. Our worth is about the quality of our relationships with other people and to spirit. But you don't get that message when you're only so tall. That's not the message that is pervasive in our society, in our culture, in our world. And so when we talk about, like, at the macro level, the messages that we receive, they absolutely impact the way that we feel about ourselves and how we conduct ourselves in family and in relationship during the day at the micro level. And it causes us to have this conflict between what it is that we think we should be and who we are. Can anybody else relate to that?
I can, and like what you were reading earlier from Shanti is, I'm trying to still unlearn all that, or undo all that harmful stuff that happened to me in my, the first 5, 6, 7 years of my life. And the only time I can undo that is the present moment right now. If I'm consciously and mentally and physically and wholly here right now, I can make other choices than what I might have made if I was just going along unconsciously. And so that's my struggle, is to realize that any moment I can just focus on being present and just being aware of what I'm doing, what I'm thinking, what I'm deciding, what I'm choosing.
Yeah, definitely bringing it back to the moment. Angel, I want to get you because I know you've had your hand up.
I used to have a very clear impression of myself, which was very convoluted, but what I was able to do to hold it up was I only traveled in circles of people who supported what I thought about myself. My life was very empty. I was not giving anything to my community, my fellow man, or anything like that. It was totally just self-gratifying and meaningless. And as I shifted and advanced as a human being, how my vision of myself, what makes me feel that how I feel about myself now is accurate is I really can't say that I travel in circles, because there are no circles. I interact with so many people from so many walks of life. And I think I'm accurate about me because I continue to see the same thing reflected back from, in general, from all the people that I interact with. So I see that similarity, kind of like if you were in one of those mirrors, you can turn around at all the angles, to check out your whole outfit. You're kind of seeing the same thing. That's where I feel that I'm at a much more accurate reflection of myself. And I know that if I was to step outside of myself, it would be immediately known. I would see, if I became very monsterish acting, all of a sudden I would see lots of faces of horror looking back at me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's.
Yeah, thanks, Angel. I mean, what I hear you sort of talking about is, again, what Reverend Denise was talking about in the poem is this almost gut level understanding and intuition about the self and who we are, and being able to really trust that. And it's wonderful when you find yourself able to trust that. I do think that that is a challenge for lots of people. And it's especially a challenge right now when things do feel quite so uncertain. Bill wanted to make a comment. Yeah.
I mean, I'll say something. So one of the things that I've come across the past few years, it's kind of hard to like lay it out there, but I do have this opinion of myself and how I am. And sometimes I get information back that says, no, that is not how you are. That is not what you are. And it's a kind of it's a negative kind of a comment. And it makes me question, what I think about myself. And so recently I've really kind of decided that, that if I feel what is true for me and others are saying something opposite, that it's more about them and some issue that they are having than it is about me. And I don't know if that's the right thing to do, because I kind of try to turn a microscope in and take a look at that, but sometimes that's even hard to do.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
It does. And it's interesting because I think that there are times where there are some times where people can see things in us a bit more accurately than we are able to see them in ourselves. And then there are times where we may have to question what it is that other folks see in us. I was having a conversation this weekend with my husband, and he said to me, "You don't think you've ever yelled at me before?" And I said, "I haven't. I've never yelled at you." And he was like, "Sir, that's not true." And I thought, you know what? He is probably right. I probably have raised my voice at him. Now, of course, I am a perfect husband in my mind.
Right.
He is so fortunate to have me. I would never yell at him. It just would never happen. Okay. So when he said that, I was like, you know what? This is probably an area where I am not seeing myself so accurately. But I'm sure I'm the only person on here who's ever had that experience.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
I think Laura's gonna say that.
I just wanted to add something too. I think that so often the part that we don't see about ourselves is also the beauty of ourselves, that we don't run and really acknowledge that part of it. I mean, that golden shadow. And because I mean, somewhere along the line, we're taught maybe not to be proud or not, who we really are, or you think you're all that, but we really need to do that. I mean, the peacock needs to be a peacock, so we do need to kind of honor that piece too. And then Laura, to you, I was reminded of this movie. There's this movie, it's called The Letter Writer. And it came out many years ago. It's probably a B-class movie, but it's one of my favorite movies. But it's about this older man in a assisted living home who felt like he had nothing to do, but he knew how to write. And so he wrote these random letters to people, letters of confidence and encouragement and things like that. And so even though we may be somewhat disabled, there's still things that we can do for the world and that the world needs from us. So anyway, I just want to offer that.
Thank you, Laura.
You're welcome.
Like I one, how do we own all of ourselves, both good and bad? That's a work for some of us, owning the positive aspects of who we are. And a couple of people have mentioned it now, and so I think it's important to also introduce the idea of service as a way of connecting to self, just as much as it's a way of connecting to other people, and the importance of giving back, the importance of being of service to someone in whatever way or capacity you might be able to. How that can also help to lift and improve the way that we see ourselves. Yeah, so I appreciate you bringing that in, Laura. Thank you. I thought Jordan was going to make another comment. On this same theme, excuse me, we talked a little bit about how we understand our perspective of ourselves, when maybe to question whether or not it's accurate, how to go about doing that. And then really also dealing with sort of the sometimes anxiety that can come up with not truly always wanting to accept the tough things about ourselves, like you yelled at me, or you've yelled at me before. Let's pivot now and talk a little bit about anxiety. We haven't talked very much about anxiety, what it looks like, how it manifests, and really how it's our thinking and our relationship to these beliefs, these core beliefs that we carry, that drives much of that anxiety. So part of it certainly is about the uncertainty of the future. The other part of it, of course, is about not really being able to discern the truth in our present because we're receiving so much either rapidly changing information or misinformation. But anxiety is that experience that we can all, and it's different from sort of from nerves. We all have nerves, right? Our nerves are like evolutionarily important, right? It's important that you get a little nervous if you see a rabid dog coming toward you. That should make you nervous. It would make me nervous, right? It's a way of like sort of triggering fight or flight. Exactly. Thank you, Nelda. I appreciate you. So that you know when to act and when not to act, right? It helps you to, like, if a car is barreling down the street toward you and you see it coming your way and it doesn't look like it's going to stop, you better be able to react quickly, or else you might end up Wile E. Coyote pancake or something. So you want to be careful about that, right? So we're not really talking about the nerves or being nervous, because I remember when I was in school, I always did my best studying the night before the exam, because there is a part of our nerves, there's a part of anxiety that can be helpful to us, useful for us. I was able to stay up later with the assistance of lots of Diet Coke to study for exams. Okay, so anxiety in and of itself is not all bad or good, right? But when it can cross over a certain threshold and begin to work against us, when worry and nervousness is pervasive, when it is touching every domain of our life, our relationships, our health, our finances, somebody else's health. I mean, when it's everywhere you touch, if all you have are the spinning thoughts and they are associated with irritability, feelings of restlessness, carrying tension in your body. People can carry tension in their bodies in all kinds of ways. For some people, it's their neck and shoulders. You tell them, oh my gosh, put your shoulders down, tension up here, right? People can literally carry tension and anxiety in their gut. And that might impact, number two, their bowels, right? Some people get a fluttering in their chest. And when it gets really bad, they might even experience episodes of anxiety or panic. Shortness of breath, chest pain, a feeling that they may die, a feeling that they won't be able to escape, a feeling that a terror that comes over them, a concern that this sort of experience will continue to happen to them over and over again. So as a psychiatrist, I spent a lot of time evaluating people for anxiety. Anxiety can certainly be worsened by certain things like poor sleep. And none of us are really necessarily at our best if we're not getting adequate sleep, right? The trick in all of this, though, is that anxiety can also worsen sleep, which then makes your anxiety worse, which then makes your sleep worse. And so then you can get caught up in the cycle. at that point? How do you break the cycle? For some people, if they're anxious, no appetite at all. You're not eating, energy levels go down, ability to concentrate, not as good. Some people get headaches. Tension headaches are called tension headaches because of tension. So if you have somebody that's like frequently experiencing headaches, that might be some manifestation of anxiety. So by the time people get to me, and they've really been struggling with anxiety for quite some time, usually what has happened is, and like was mentioned, I'm an addiction psychiatrist. Usually in my practice, people have been medicating with all kinds of things. Alcohol, cannabis, you name it. People can medicate with lots of different things, lots of different behaviors. And so deciphering what's really underneath that anxiety can become really one of the most important parts of the work. So when you think about your own level of anxiety, and I think everyone's anxiety is kind of up these days. Delta certainly have not helped us. And I don't know about you, but I'm certainly having more and more friends and colleagues, regardless of vaccination status, testing positive for Delta variant, especially in Houston, where they had like over 5,000 new cases in a day last week. I mean, we're seeing an explosion right now, right? But that's just like one aspect of life. We still have our work, we still have relationships, we still have family, we still have our health. We have all of these things that can contribute to anxiety or a sense of dread almost about the future. How do you manage anxious thoughts? What strategies have worked for you? What things have you tried that you think might be helpful to the group? Yeah, go. We've got Craig, we've got Leudde.
Go ahead, Nelda.
Thanks, Craig. So I apologize for being delayed, but you just asked about what is one of the things that helps with anxiety. I've got 2 points. One, all the stress that we're dealing with that I'm hearing everybody talk about, including me, it also affects your capacity to think. I mean, that is it. There's literally a hormone, is it cortisol, that goes in and blocks your ability to think and process. So if you're already anxious about Afghanistan, if you're anxious about COVID, if you're anxious about work and your health and your family and your friends, and it just goes on and on and on, and not able to sleep, it takes 2 hours to come down from that block of your brain. And so one of the things that I do, I literally, when something really bad happens or something that's stressful, I just start talking to God immediately and just say, you know, take this from me, and it keeps popping up, take this from me, I know you got it, take this. I go for a walk, I pull weeds, I start to do something else to try to, I guess, deactivate, turn my brain off. So I exercise now, and MCC offers a jazzercise class, and that's what I was doing. It's from 5:15 to 6:15 on Mondays. So I apologize for being really important for my ability to deal with the stress that's happening around me. That's something that works for me. I don't know if it'll work for anybody else. Walking.
I appreciate all of those suggestions, Nelda. Thank you so much. Because I heard prayer, I heard meditation, I heard activity, I heard hobbies, I heard gardening, I heard exercise, I heard walking. Lots of potential options available. Craig.
Well, I'm kind of like Nelda. I love to ride the bicycle. So that helps with anxiety. And then, taking mindfulness breaks. I work for CVS Health, and CVS Health lets their employees actually schedule mindfulness sessions during the workday so that we can take that break, that 10-minute break at noon, and have an instructor led, just become aware, just breathe, and it's really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Craig. Angel. You're muted.
Before I recognized that it was anxiety that I was having many years ago, what I did is I got, and I'm sure you'll understand this if you work with addiction, is I got very much in a lifestyle pattern of trying to escape the uncomfortableness. And so I was continually running from the issues in some form or fashion. And what was keeping me from, or what was keeping me running is any time that I would think about facing what was going on, I found that my mind was very dominated by thoughts of should. You know, how you spoke about, I should do this, I should do that, I should. And once it was pointed out to me how often that term should was being used in my vocabulary, and I was encouraged to be aware of it, that right there was an empowering step. And what I realized is that in the process of running from the enemy, so to speak, I never had a chance to stop and assess what type of tools could be used to combat it. Once I, and I was a situation, no one can help someone if they're not ready to help themselves. So I was ready for a change of life thought pattern style. I was, there was something called like super happy and, joy, and I wanted some of it. And so, and I stopped, running from the negative, the demons, the beast, whatever people refer to it, and turned around and faced it. And by doing that, I was able to then use my intelligence, I was able to access my tools. Okay, these are my tools. So what can I do to get, fleeing in that fight or flight? I didn't have an opportunity to assess the enemy because my back was to it and it was always behind me, chasing me. So, and it does take some courage, because I found that I had, and people I've helped with some of these similar problems through the years, you get comfortable, you get in companionship sometimes with that, with not, it's what you're familiar with. And reflecting how I felt too, I was familiar with having a crappy life. That's what I knew. And so the idea of stepping out into something all, very new, even though it was very enticing, one of the things that initially held me back is I immediately realized that by living better and being happier, that I then became at risk of having something that mattered to lose. And because I had gone through suicidal period, it was very easy for me to say that I didn't want to live anymore because it didn't really seem like I had anything to lose. But once life began to matter, that was a whole new thing of getting familiar with having things that mattered that were going to be painful and hurtful if I lost them. And it took some courage to take that step because it was really, looking back, it was easy. It was a much simpler way of living when nothing mattered.
Yeah. Well, Angel, thank you so much for your share. So powerful. I mean, I think one of the first things you talked about was the shoulds, the shouldas, the wouldas, the couldas. And in the book, Shakti sort of talks about the shoulds as when she talks about the inner critic. This inner critic that we all carry with us, who walks with us shoulder to shoulder and has suggestions about how that could have been done differently or better or faster or for less money or for more money or for whatever the thing is, that inner critic is present. And Angel, I like what you said because it wasn't necessarily that you get rid of the inner critic, like you don't kick the person out. It's really almost like you make an acquaintance of it, peace with it, by better understanding what it is that the critic is trying to get you to do. And it goes back to those core beliefs that you may have inherited as a kid from society, the messages that you received. And so part of the work, I think, of undoing the shoulds is directly facing them. I should do this. Okay, wait, let me interrogate that. Why, where did I learn that I should do blank? And you start there. This is how we have the more painful, but important examined life. We examine these things, we take stock of them. It's one of the reasons why you're on here on a Monday night. Because you're like examining this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I will say, you know, the breakthrough came from when it was pointed out to me, and I've in my earlier years, I went through a lot of therapy, and I didn't use a lot of it then, but it stuck. And so when I was ready, I brought it out. But the real like complete revolutionary thing for me in my life was, like I said, when that word should was addressed to my mother was my nemesis. And in my conversation, you know, my mom should be doing this and she shouldn't act like that and should. And once that was pointed out to me, and I realized that I was allowing her to be the demon by giving her the power of the should. And once I got rid of all of that and just took it as this is how she is and this is what she does, bam, then there came the step. But those shoulds kept me in such a locked in state and, you know, very much made me feel like a victim, and getting rid of the shoulds removed the victimization from the equation. It was very empowering.
Thank you. One of the most crippling shoulds, I should be perfect. I should have all the answers. I should know everything. And if I am those things, then I will be loved. I will be accepted. I will be successful. You can't even trip walking down the street without looking around to see who saw you. Yes, absolutely. Go, please.
I keep my anxiety down. And this is a double-edged sword, is I like routine and scheduling. And so that can serve as a bad thing because you got to do it, or it can serve as a good thing because I have something to look forward that I know I can be successful at and I can do. And so routine for me is really good. I get up in the morning, I work out, I say my prayers, I do this at noontime, I have this, you know. So I'm not known as the most spontaneous person, but I can be. But for my day, shut Craig. But for my day, it's good for me to have several things put out there so that I have goals to meet. And if I went by the seat of my pants, like someone I know, oh my God, it would Terry too. I don't know how I could work with that. I like to have something there each day, and that helps me get through the day.
Yeah.
But I can be a nemesis too, you know, because I think I've got to do it or I should do it. Yes.
Yeah. So part of this is balance, and you know, it's a practice, right? It's a practice where we are trying to find the balance between getting ourselves active, creating a little bit of a routine and schedule. There's nothing really wrong with that. And also not being so rigid and holding ourselves accountable that it begins to work against us. How do you know when you're experiencing anxiety? What tells you? Linda?
At the beginning of this year, I had a lot of anxiety issues. It was so bad that I had to be hospitalized for it. And before I realized what it was, I would get burning across my back, down my legs, and I didn't want to eat and had no appetite at all. And when it got really bad, I couldn't sleep. I went 4 days without eating. So I knew that, you know, it was pretty bad. And now I'm just worried that it's going to happen again. I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate you sharing. Thank you so much, Linda, for sharing with us tonight. So what Linda has talked about just now is not an uncommon experience at all for folks that are really, truly struggling with anxiety. And it's important, and Reverend Denise and I talked about this, to utilize the resources that we have available to us through church community, through therapists, through psychiatrists, if you primary care physician, taking medication if necessary, because all of those things together can really help with crippling anxiety. And I have seen people's lives really transformed as a result of getting into care and getting into treatment. And it takes time, because some of these beliefs that we've been carrying for literally decades and still receiving those messages, like, let me be clear, okay? So it's not just that we were told as kids what it meant to be successful, how we had to behave in order to be loved. We continue to receive those messages today. It is a constant deprogramming that is taking place. Please, Angel.
Yeah, you know, that word deprogramming, it just really brings to light, you know, I like, again, you know, I deal with a really wide variety of people in my life, professionally and just in regular relationships. And what is unfortunate, and I know it's a burden that we can all bear together because we're going through it together and we can all be there, you know, for each other, is in general, even though some of us might have come from rougher backgrounds, here in this country, we've really been conditioned almost in that kind of Pollyanna principle. You know, we're used to the grocery store always being open. We are so advanced in so many ways, but the majority of the world, we're really at a disadvantage because there are so many things every day that we're used to having, and that gets unsettled, and so easily we become unsettled because of it. And I think this is a time, you know, for me personally, I've felt it for a while, but I think as a whole, a lot of awakening is happening, that we've been sold a lot of bullshit in our lives. And the more we start seeing what's kind of going on in our own neighborhood, in our own country, we start seeing scenes happening that we've only seen on TV that happens way over there. And it's so much happening so fast that, you know, this isn't supposed to happen to us. This isn't supposed to be happening here. And it's tough. You know, it's, I consider myself a real soldier, and there are times that it even rattles me. And, you know, I try to make myself available to others as often as possible. And it is through the connections that we will find our strength, because I'm telling you guys, if all of you that I'm familiar with, you know, any of you I'm not, I am the person that, you know, I will be at the compound. I will let you in my compound. I know how to start a fire. I mean, even if it's through love and through community that we stay united in that and just let that grow stronger, inevitable things can happen, but we do not have to be fearful of being without people there that love and support you, Linda, and you know we're there for you, or people who, you know, we will get the water together. And we have to remember that, yeah, it might get tough, and it very well is going to get tougher, but together, you know, we can have the best discomfort possible.
So, I mean, I think it's really important to, again, acknowledge Linda and her share, her power powerful share,
Yes.
and the vulnerability that she showed tonight, and the courage that it takes to be vulnerable.
Yes.
And this really does become an opportunity to create supportive community from one another. It is the reason why we do this thing here.
Mhm.
And so we were talking a little bit more about like, how do we reduce our own anxiety? And part of that reduction in our anxiety can come from connection with other people and being deliberate and mindful about that. So what commitments can you all make today to yourselves and to each other to support one another during these really difficult times when our thinking sometimes can get the best of us? And so before you answer, give it just a little bit of thought, right? It could be, I mean, and we're all, because the other problem right now is that our ability to sort of touch and be connected with each other physically, like that can feel very unsafe for us. We've talked about the uncertainty and the unsafety in our sense of community right now. So what that could look like is like, all right, I'm gardening, I'm pulling weeds. You want to come over and pull weeds with me? We'll both wear masks outside and we'll be 6 feet away, and we'll try to do it when it's not 95 degrees outside. We'll start early in the morning. We getting really creative about the way that we connect with each other is probably one of the most important things we can do moving forward, so that it's not always about the work that you do by yourselves. This is not just about how you stop and meditate on your own. Not to say that that's not important, because it is. Not to say that you stopping and praying and reading your Bible, like that's, of course that's important too. But what I guess I'm challenging is this notion that what you used to do is still enough. So we all got to develop some new skills and some new strategies on how to manage this. And they also have to involve other people. Somebody that can challenge your notions about who you are in the best possible way. And those who can like draw you out of yourself, pull you back into the present moment and stop spinning out about the future. So what commitment can you make today?
I think it's important to also, like for me, to let all of you that I know that I care about so much is, you know, going back to the adage, you know, come as you are, you know, come, if you're sad, come in your sadness, and, you know, like offering a safe space for somebody to go through the experience of however they're feeling. You know, there are no shoulds here. You know, you don't have to call me up and with a happy face. It doesn't have to be an occasion. If you want to just sit here and, you know, in silence, you know, and just whatever, just however you are, it's totally fine. But you are not how you are alone. That message of just reaffirming that you are not alone is just, I can't shake it, how strong sending that message out is at this time.
That's right. That's right. It's a radical acceptance of yourself and a radical acceptance of others. Please, Linda.
I think that a lot of my anxiety comes from worrying about being alone, because when I was young, I was left alone a lot. And now I'm not alone now, but I guess it's just always, I can't get rid of that feeling. So it's good to know that, Angel, you know, what you just said, that, you know, community, and you're there for people, and everybody here I know will be there for everybody, you know, each other.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. I also like the idea of routine, which was mentioned earlier today, and scheduling things with folks and getting it on the agenda and saying, all right, we have a 15-minute check-in every Monday. And we don't have to talk about anything. We could talk about what came on the night before, or Family Feud, or Jeopardy. I don't care, but like, It's just an opportunity. Let's create an opportunity for us to connect and reduce the feelings of loneliness and isolation. Because that is really a big part of this. We have not had access to the people and the places and the things that have helped us to manage our feelings and our emotional experience of this world. I was talking to a colleague today, and he was saying, just when I thought I'd be able to go back to the movies, ... But that's happening in all of our lives at the micro level and the macro level. Just when I thought I'd be able to go on this cruise in November, ... Just when I thought I'd be able to safely go back to church and feel safe and fine with it, ... Just when I thought I'd be able to hang out with my family, even my family members that are unvaccinated, ...
I think too, it's important that you let yourself get pissed, because you get pissed off. I mean, that's an emotion that needs to come out too. I've gone through.
What's underneath it, Angel? What's underneath it?
The frustration of not being able to change it. It's that there's been episodes of this whole situation that in a couple of moments, it's felt so surreal that it's, like when you're having a bad dream and you shake yourself, and, it's like from the bombardment of this is happening and this is happening and this is happening. There was a piece of me that fell into that, wanting to escape in a moment, just like thinking, is this like the worst dream I've ever had? And I'm just going to be able to shake myself up. And, and then I realized that I was very angry, angry because of the unity, the lack of unity to help a situation get better, and the selfish individualism expressed so blatantly that's helped it get worse. So there was some social anger, as a course of the pandemic, as a course of, things that the racial situations that went on. It was just this huge culmination. Getting that anger out by just acknowledging, hey, I'm angry. That kind of let that, the top off of the pot, got some of that steam out there, and got me recentered to be like, okay, where can I attack this in the way that can make the most advance for myself and for others around me?
So that's a great question or comment, excuse me. And what just happened just now is Angel did, I don't know if you intended to do this, but you deconstructed your anger for us while you were talking. So when I pushed you to say, what's underneath that anger? What's underneath that? You talked about feeling trapped. You talked about feeling helpless, feelings of helplessness, feelings of outrage at injustice. And when you find yourself in this space of anger, I would encourage everyone to say, all right, I'm really mad right now. Let me try to figure out what's underneath this. For some people, it's fear. For some people, it's sadness. For some people, it's isolation. So what's underneath the anger that you're experiencing? The anger is the easy part to get to. But there's usually something at the core. And certainly if you feel trapped in your home or in your life as a result of coronavirus, you're going to be angry about that. But it's the feeling of trapped that sparks it. The feeling of helplessness. No one wants to feel helpless. Creates in us a great sense of sadness, fear, and anger. In our remaining 10 minutes, oh, no, Nelda, please go.
Real quick. So on top of all the things that Angel said, and thank you, Angel, thank you, Linda, a lot of things that were said that kind of tapped into all of our core, I'm sure. This week, there was a man walking his dog without a leash, and it just ticked me off. Of all the things, I mean, it was like I was on the phone talking to a friend, And I was like, the audacity of this guy, there's ordinances, don't you know how to follow rules? And I'm talking to a friend of mine who happens to be a Republican. And so it was just spewing out and it was just coming out. And I said, my God, I said, I'm sorry. I said, I don't know where I just went off. And I said, I think it's from just really being upset about fighting a mask mandate for schools. I just don't, it doesn't make sense to me, right? It just doesn't make sense to me. And then it bled into the politics piece, but getting to the root of what it is and recognizing it is so important. And even though I do go pull weeds, during those weed pullings, I'm sitting here trying to process, right?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to share that, yes, sometimes if we don't deal with those things, then it comes out some way. And it'll come out in against people that are completely innocent of whatever was happening. It'll come out in your health. It'll affect you in many ways. So yes, I said, I promise to be available to listen. Heck, if you want to come mow the yard with me, I mow every two times a week. I walk at Memorial Park, anything. You can get my number from Denise if you'd like to do those things. I walk on Mondays and Fridays at Memorial Park, and that's really nice meditative space.
Thank you, Neldeh. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I'm going to piggyback on something that you just said. Around the time of the start of the pandemic last year, I was talking about like managing anxiety and so forth. And one of the things that people talked about a lot at the time was getting hobbies and trying to get active and what that could look like. And some people would say things like, I never really had hobbies before, or I had hobbies years ago, but work or family or kids got in the way. And so I've gotten away from those things, or money got in the way of things. People might have been without work. And so trying to figure out ways of being active or finding hobbies was a lot of the conversation from last year, you may recall. And one of the things that I would sometimes encourage people to do is I would say, all right, you should do the ABCs of hobbies. And you start off with the letter A. I'm going to try archery. Sorry, y'all, that's the best I can do right now. So I'm going to give myself, this week is my A week. I'm going to try archery. Okay, you do archery like I don't like archery. Okay, and the next thing, B, backgammon. I'm not doing well. Axe throwing, much better. Thank you. Much better. You get to C. Bowling, thank you. So trying to like work through some things that like sound, make it easy for yourself, low-hanging fruit, stuff that doesn't necessarily feel entirely like work. This is a little bit of work, but you don't want it to be so much work that you don't feel like, oh, I don't want to do that. And then you should yourself into a shame spiral, because that's not what this is about. It's about approaching with a spirit of exploration. And you don't have to be good at any of this. In fact, I would encourage you to pick stuff that you can be purposely bad at. Stuff you don't have to be good at. I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna be bad at this thing. I'm gonna be bad at axe throwing.
Wow, we've got about 5 minutes left. And so with the time remaining, if you have a question, well, let's ask this. What question would you like Dr. Shorter to answer for you right now in the time that we have left?
Can I say something before we get to the questions? For your B, busting up shit. There are those places where you take a sledgehammer and you go through and you beat the crap out of everything in the room. Man, you can get some frustration out. I've wanted to do that, but never have.
Please do it and report back to the group. Yeah, it's so easy to shoot yourself into a shame spiral.
Yeah, great conversation. I do want, if there's someone who has a question or even have another comment, let's take at least one more before we wrap. This is a great opportunity. We have such a person who's, so knowledgeable.
I have a question if no one else does. what would be your top suggestion to get people to be receptive to a tremendously changing world when their usual form of life and happiness is apt to change?
Yeah. So I like a lot of what has been said in this group already. I certainly appreciate time for quiet reflection and contemplation. I must also check my thinking with other folks. I love accept your vulnerability. Oh, that's so good, Nelda. Thank you. And to piggyback on what Nelda just said about accepting your own vulnerability, it's also being able to share that with other people. Because it's not enough for me to just know about my own stuff. I really have to get to a space where I'm willing to talk about it with someone else so that the healing can occur within the context of the relationship that gets built by you sharing. So that's a big one for me. I have to be very careful about the information that I take in. I mean, I talked a little bit about the misinformation and we're sort of bombarded. I mean, I don't know that we allow ourselves to really think through the impact of a 24-hour news cycle and like what that has done to us, and notifications on your phone and on your laptop and on your tablet, and it's nonstop. So what does disconnection look like for you? How can you be mindful about it? Do you need to take a break from social media? And what does that look like? Now, some people will say, oh, but you know, my business is on social media. I have to do social media because that's my marketing. Okay. How can you still change the relationship that you have to social media? Do you turn it off after a certain time of day? What's the information that you're taking in? And I know we're about to go over, so I'll say one more thing. I went on a news hike. Like I was like, I'm deleting all apps, all social media, all of it. And what I realized was that if there was anything that was really super important, somebody was going to text me. They were going to let me know. So if I just deleted CNN.com, you know, off my phone and all the other stuff, it was fine. And I've like had a little withdrawal, like picking up my phone, my phone's always with me, pick up my phone. And eventually I got to a point where I was like, you know what, I actually feel better. Found that like my own level of anxiety and stress actually went down as a result of that. So there are all kinds of changes that we can make for ourselves in our lives and ways of connecting with other people that can help to build a sense of community, reduce this sense of collective grief that we are all really struggling with, and perhaps combat some of the anxious thoughts that can definitely keep us up at night. Well, thank you for letting me hang out with you all this evening. I really appreciate you all being here. Thank you.
Yeah. Dr. Shorter, thank you so much. This has been very informative, and you've addressed so many different areas of what we're all experiencing right now, and even helped us to be more self-reflective of the things that we can actually do for ourselves. And so next week, so thank you for that. Next week, we're going to talk to a therapist who also came recommended by Dr. Shorter and a friend and colleague, and her name is Delores Hendrix-Giles. I believe it's with a strong G, Giles. And so she'll be with us next week. And so I really look forward to you all participating in that. So to help our speakers, it's always good when speakers know that they've done well. And the way they know that is because we actually tell them. So if there's one word you can put in the chat that you're walking away with, or a statement that you're walking away with, if you could put that in the chat, and I'll collect all those, and that will help our speaker to know that he has really done some really good service for us. And while we're doing that, if someone wants to say something specific to him, we'll take 1 or 2 comments and then we'll close for the night. So what is that one word? Yes, informative. Yes. Yes, light. Yes. Dr. Shorter rocks. Very enjoyable. Great. That's so true. Comforting. Okay. Are there any resources specific that you could point people to? Is there a website, or is there something that we can offer if someone feels like they need more resources?
Yes, of course, I will email you.
Okay. Okay, very good. Very, very good. Okay, well, thank you all again for joining, and we'll be here again next Monday, and we're on our 3rd level of healing, which will be emotional. So far we've covered spiritual level, and now we've covered mental, and now we got to get underneath it all and get to the emotional, and then Laine will take us home with that physical level and really help us. In fact, I should mention, you all will get an email from me with some assessment material for our last night when we do the physical. So look forward to some homework that you'll get for the part on diet, nutrition, and the physical level of healing. So thank you again for being here tonight. I appreciate all of your participation and your presence, and we'll see you next time. Stay dry and stay out of the lightning.
And I just want to say thank you all for your honesty and your vulnerability tonight, and for sharing so openly with this really wonderful community. I hope you all can figure out ways to continue to support one another as we all like brave this world that we're in. So thank you for letting me be here tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Shorter.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.